They sold my childhood home behind my back. Every memory, gone without a word. I'd make them regret it. I'm Jeremy, 35, a small business accountant. My parents' secret deal to sell our family home gutted me, leaving nothing but lies. I used to think family meant trust, no questions asked. Now I know. Sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. The tires crunched on the gravel driveway as I pulled up to the house, the familiar oak tree casting shadows over the porch. It was the day after Thanksgiving, and I'd driven 3 hours from the city, my trunk packed with a bottle of wine and a pie for my parents. At 35, I still felt like a kid coming home, chasing memories of summer nights in the backyard, my mom's laughter, my dad teaching me to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac. The house was my anchor, the one constant in a life of deadlines and spreadsheets. I grabbed the pie, my breath fogging in the crisp air, and walked to the front door. It was locked. I knocked, my knuckles stinging from the cold. No answer. I peered through the window, my reflection staring back. The living room was empty. No furniture, no photos, just bare walls and dust. My stomach dropped. I stepped back, and that's when I saw it. A for sale sign staked in the front yard, the realtor's name in bold red letters. My heart slammed against my ribs. This had to be a mistake. I fumbled for my phone and called my mom. Straight to voicemail. My dad's number, same. My hands shook as I dialed again, the pie slipping to the ground, the tin denting in the dirt. Nothing. I stood there, the November wind cutting through my jacket, my mind racing. This was the house where I'd carved my initials into the attic beam, where I'd buried my first dog under the maple tree. They wouldn't sell it, not without telling me. I walked around the side hoping for answers and saw Mrs. Carter, our neighbor, raking leaves. She looked up, her face softening, then tightening. "Jeremy, I thought you knew," she said, her voice low. "Your parents sold the place 2 weeks ago. Said they needed the money." My throat burned. "Sold 2 weeks ago?" I'd talked to my mom last Sunday. She'd asked about my job, my plans for the holiday, not one word about the house. Mrs. Carter's eyes darted away like she was embarrassed for me. "They didn't tell you?" she asked. I shook my head, my jaw so tight it hurt. She sighed, leaning on her rake. "They've been struggling, hon. Debts, bad investments. They're in Florida now, some condo." Florida. They hadn't just sold my home, they'd fled. I walked back to the car, my boots scuffing the gravel. The for sale sign stared at me, a knife in my gut. Every memory, Christmas mornings, my first kiss on the porch, my dad's old record player spinning in the garage, was in that house. They'd ripped it away without a word. I slid into the driver's seat, my hands gripping the wheel, my breath shallow. Betrayal wasn't just a sale. It was the lie, the silence, the erasure of who I was. I wasn't their son in that moment, just a stranger they'd left behind. They thought they could erase my past and walk away. I'd make sure they faced me first. The drive back to the city was a blur, my hands tight on the steering wheel. The for sale sign burned into my mind. My phone sat in the passenger seat, silent, mocking me. I'd left 3 voicemails for my mom, 2 for my dad, each one sharper than the last. Nothing. My chest felt like it was caving in, the weight of their betrayal heavier than the empty house I'd just left. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, the sky was bruising purple, and my anger had hardened into something cold, focused. I wasn't letting this go. I sat at my kitchen table, the pie tin still dented in the back seat of my car, and dialed my parents again. This time my mom picked up. "Jeremy, calm down," she said, her voice clipped like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. "We didn't tell you because we knew you'd overreact." Overreact. My jaw clenched, my free hand curling into a fist. "You sold my home," I said, my voice low, shaking. "The house I grew up in." Without a word, she sighed, long and tired. "It's just a house, Jeremy. We had debts to clear, investments to make. You're not a child anymore," I wanted to scream. Instead, I pressed the phone harder against my ear, my knuckles white. My dad got on, his tone gruffer. "We needed a fresh start," he said. "Florida's cheaper. The condo's nice. You'll see it someday." Someday. They'd moved 200 miles away, sold my childhood without a heads up, and expected me to nod along. I pictured the attic where I'd hidden as a kid, the backyard where I'd built forts. Just a house? It was my anchor, my proof of who I was. Their excuses, debts, investments, felt like lies to cover their shame. I pushed harder. "Why not tell me? Why cut me out? Silence." Then my mom, sharp now. You're always so sentimental, Jeremy. It's done. Move on. Move on. The words hit like a slap. They weren't just selling the house. They were erasing me from it, from them. I hung up, my breath ragged, my apartment too quiet. I opened my laptop, searching the realtor's website. The house was listed. Photos showing bare rooms where my life used to be. Auction date, 2 weeks. My parents hadn't just betrayed me. They'd left me to find out from a neighbor like I was nobody. I leaned back, my chair creaking, my pulse hammering. I'd spent years balancing their books, helping them with taxes, thinking family meant loyalty. Now I saw the truth. They'd used me, then discarded me. The anger wasn't loud anymore. It was a quiet blade, sharpening with every thought. They thought they could walk away, pocket the cash, and leave me with nothing. But I wasn't done. That house was mine, and I'd fight to take it back. They thought I'd swallow their lies and walk away. But I was already planning to take back what was mine. The glow of my laptop screen lit up my apartment. The realtor's website opened to the auction listing for my childhood home. 2 weeks. That's all I had to reclaim the place where I'd carved my initials into the attic, where every creak of the floorboards held a memory. My parents' call still burned in my ears. It's just a house, Jeremy. Move on. I slammed my coffee mug down, the handle cracking against the table. Move on? They'd sold my past without a word, and now I was staring at a countdown to lose it forever. I opened my accounting software, pulling up my parents' financial records. I'd helped them with taxes for years, so I had access to their accounts, bank statements, investments, debts. What I found made my stomach twist. They weren't just in debt. They'd been bleeding money for years. Bad real estate deals, a failed restaurant venture, credit card bills stacked like a house of cards. The sale of our home wasn't about a fresh start. It was a desperate grab to cover their mistakes. My fingers froze on the keyboard. They'd kept me in the dark, used the house as their bailout, and left me to pick up the pieces. My own savings were pitiful. Years of freelance accounting for small businesses, cafes, gyms, startups had kept me afloat, but not much more. I had $12,000 in the bank, a fraction of what a house in that neighborhood would fetch. The auction listing estimated a starting bid of $200,000, maybe more with investors circling. My chest tightened, a mix of panic and defiance. I couldn't let some stranger walk away with my home, tearing up the backyard where I'd buried my dog, repainting the walls where my mom hung my school photos. But how could I compete? I paced the apartment, my socks slipping on the hardwood, my mind churning. Bidding was a long shot, but it was all I had. I'd need every cent I could scrape together, savings, side gigs, maybe a loan. The thought made my palms sweat. Risking everything for a house felt reckless, like something my parents would do. But this wasn't about money. It was about taking back what they'd stolen. My roots, my memories, my right to decide. I sat back down, my jaw tight, and started calculating. Every number I crunched felt like a step toward a fight I wasn't sure I could win. I texted Lena, an old high school friend who'd become a real estate agent. Need help with an auction? I typed, my thumb hesitating over send. Lena knew the house, knew what it meant to me. If anyone could guide me through this, she could. But the risk loomed large, my savings, my stability, all on the line for a chance to outbid the vultures. I hit send, my heart pounding like it was already auction day. The auction was coming, and I was out of my depth. Could I really pull this off, or was I chasing a ghost? Lena's text came through at 10 p.m., the ping cutting through the hum of my apartment's silence. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop. 8 a.m., I've got something. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Lena had been my friend since we were kids, sneaking firecrackers into the backyard of that very house. Now a real estate agent, she knew the game. Auctions, buyers, dirty deals. If anyone could help me take back my childhood home, it was her. I barely slept, my mind spinning with numbers. $12,000 in savings against a house worth 10 times that. The math didn't add up, but giving up wasn't an option. The coffee shop smelled of burnt espresso and rain-damp coats. Lena slid into the booth across from me, her laptop already open, her eyes sharp. Your parents screwed you, Jeremy, she said, no sugarcoating. She'd pulled the sale records. The house was sold to a holding company, a quick flip to dodge taxes orchestrated by my parents' shady financial advisor. They didn't just need money, she said, her voice low. They wanted a big payout fast. They're hiding assets in Florida. My jaw tightened, my coffee untouched, growing cold. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd played the system thinking I'd never know. Lena leaned forward, her fingers tapping the table. The auction's public. Investors will swarm. Big money from out of state. But I know the auctioneer. We can play smart. Her plan was simple but brutal: register as a bidder, pool every resource, and bluff our way through. She'd track the competition, figure out their ceilings. I'd need to stretch my finances to the breaking point, every cent of savings plus whatever I could borrow. My hands went clammy at the thought. I'd spent years building stability, balancing books for small businesses, living lean. Risking it all for a house felt like jumping off a cliff. We spent hours strategizing. Lena showed me how to hide my identity at the auction, using a proxy bidder to keep my parents from suspecting. She'd found a pattern in the holding company's deals: sloppy paperwork, rushed sales. If we're lucky, we can spook the big players, she said, a glint in her eye. But you'll need cash, Jeremy. Serious cash, I nodded, my throat dry. I could liquidate my emergency fund, maybe get a loan against my accounting business, but the numbers still felt like a noose. One wrong move and I'd lose everything. Not just the house, but my future. I left the coffee shop, rain soaking my jacket. Lena's words echoing, "This is your shot, but it's a long one." My parents thought they'd outsmarted me, cashed out my past for their gain. I pictured their faces when I won the bid, their Florida condo dreams crumbling. But doubt crept in, cold and heavy. Could I really outbid millionaires with a teacher's budget and a prayer? I gripped my keys, the metal biting into my palm. I was in too deep to back out now. The plan was set, but my wallet was empty. Could I scrape together enough to fight, or was I just chasing a lost cause? The bank's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat across from the loan officer, my palms sweating, my tie too tight. I'd just signed for a $50,000 loan against my accounting business, my emergency savings already liquidated, $12,000 gone in a day. Every cent I had, every future paycheck was now tied to a single bet: winning my childhood home at the auction. My stomach churned as I walked out, the loan papers heavy in my hand. I'd spent years building a stable life, balancing books for small businesses, avoiding my parents' reckless financial habits. Now I was gambling like they did. The irony stung. Back at my apartment, I spread out the numbers on my kitchen table: bank statements, loan terms, auction estimates. The house's starting bid was $200,000, but Lena warned it could climb to $300,000 with investors in the mix. My $62,000 was a drop in the bucket, but Lena had a plan. She'd called that morning, her voice sharp with excitement. "I found a loophole," she said. "The holding company's paperwork is messy, missing disclosures." I leaned on the auctioneer to delay the sale by a week. That gave me 7 more days to scrape together cash, maybe take on extra clients. My hands shook as I jotted down figures, my coffee cold, untouched. Lena came over that night, her laptop glowing with property records. "You're not just fighting for memories," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "This is about showing them you're not invisible." She was right. My parents' betrayal wasn't just the sale, it was their dismissal, their move on like I didn't matter. Every memory in that house, the creaky porch swing, the attic where I'd read comics, was a piece of me they'd tried to erase. I wasn't letting go, but doubt crept in, heavy and cold. What if I lost the bid? I'd be in debt, no house, no safety net. My throat tightened at the thought. I took on 3 new clients that week, burning through nights to balance their books, my eyes stinging from the screen. Lena worked her contacts, digging for dirt on the holding company. She found whispers of their shady flips, buying low, selling high, skimming profits. If we could expose that, it might scare off some bidders, but it was a long shot. I kept picturing my parents in their Florida condo, sipping cocktails, oblivious to the hole they'd left in me. My anger burned hotter, pushing back the fear. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about proving they couldn't break me. I stared at the loan papers, my signature a jagged scrawl. I'd bet everything on this. Lena's text buzzed through. 1 week to go. You ready? My heart pounded, my fingers cold on the phone. Ready? I wasn't sure, but I'd spent too long being the son who trusted, who stayed quiet. That Jeremy was gone. I'd poured everything into this fight, but the auction was closing in. Would my gamble pay off, or had I just signed my ruin? The auction hall smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat, the air thick with murmurs and the auctioneer's sharp cadence. I stood at the back, my hands stuffed in my pockets to hide their trembling, my $62,000 budget a fragile shield against the suits and investors filling the room. The house, my house, was lot 17, and as the projector flashed its photo, my throat tightened. The porch swing, the oak tree, the attic window where I'd dreamed as a kid, it was all up for grabs. I scanned the crowd and froze. My parents were there, front row, my mom's face tight, my dad's arms crossed. They hadn't expected me. Lena, beside me, whispered, "Stay calm. We've got this." Her insider tip from the auctioneer had given us a narrow window. The holding company's shady paperwork had spooked some bidders, thinning the competition. But the big players were still here. 3 investors in sharp suits, their paddles ready, eyes cold. The auctioneer called the starting bid at $200,000. My heart slammed against my ribs as I raised my paddle. My voice steady despite the panic. $205,000, heads turned, including my parents. My mom's eyes widened, my dad's jaw twitched. They hadn't known I'd fight. The bids climbed fast, $210,000, $225,000, $240,000. Each number was a punch, my budget shrinking with every raise. Lena's hand gripped my arm, her voice low. "Pace yourself. Wait for the lull." I nodded, sweat beading on my forehead, my mind racing through the loan I'd taken, the clients I'd worked nights for. I couldn't lose this. Not to them, not to anyone. At $260,000, 2 investors dropped out, their paddles down, faces sour. Lena's tip had worked. Rumors of the holding company's legal issues had rattled them. I bid again, $265,000. My voice cracked, but I held my ground. The room grew quiet, the auctioneer's hammer hovering. My parents whispered to each other, their faces pale. They'd counted on this sale to fund their Florida dreams, but I was unraveling them. Then a new voice cut through, $270,000. A lone investor, a man in a gray suit, his eyes locked on the auctioneer. My stomach dropped. I had $5,000 left, maybe $10,000 if I pushed the loan to its limit. Lena leaned in. "He's bluffing. He's near his cap." I didn't know if she was right, but I had no choice. I raised my paddle, my hand shaking, my voice barely audible. $275,000. The investor hesitated, his paddle twitching. The room held its breath. My parents stared at me, their shock turning to something harder, anger, maybe fear. I didn't care. This was my home, my past, and I wasn't letting it go. The auctioneer scanned the room, his gavel raised. Going once, my pulse roared in my ears, every second a lifetime. The hammer was about to fall, my last dollar on the line. Would I win my home or lose everything? The auctioneer's gavel cracked like a gunshot, echoing through the hall. "Sold to bidder 142 for $275,000. My knees buckled, but I stayed upright. My paddle still raised, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I'd done it. My childhood home, the porch swing, the attic beam, the backyard where I'd buried my dog was mine again. The crowd murmured, heads turning, but my eyes locked on my parents in the front row. My mom's face was pale, her lips parted in shock. My dad's fists clenched, his glare cutting through me. They hadn't just lost the sale. They'd lost their escape plan. Lena grabbed my arm, her whisper sharp with excitement. "You pulled it off, Jeremy." But her voice felt distant, drowned out by the blood rushing in my ears. I'd bet everything, my savings, a crippling loan, nights of grinding work, and won. But the victory tasted sharp, mixed with the sting of what it cost. My parents stood, gathering their coats, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to shout, to make them face me, to ask why they'd sold my past without a word. Instead, I stood frozen, my hands clammy, the weight of the moment sinking in. The auctioneer called for paperwork, and Lena guided me to a side table, her hand steady on my shoulder. "They didn't see you coming," she said, her eyes glinting. She was right. My parents had counted on cashing out, moving to Florida, leaving me behind. Now their financial house of cards, built on bad investments and hidden debts, was collapsing. The holding company, spooked by Lena's legal pressure, had backed off, and my bid had outlasted the last investor. I signed the forms, my signature shaky, each stroke a claim on what they'd tried to take. As I handed over the deposit, a cashier's check for $27,500, my stomach twisted. That was every cent I'd scraped together, plus the loan that had haunted me for years. The crowd thinned, but whispers followed me, about the guy who'd fought for his childhood home, about my parents' failed scheme. I caught my mom's eye as she lingered by the door. Jeremy, she started, her voice thin. We didn't mean... I cut her off with a look. You did, I said, my voice low, steady. You chose money over me. She flinched, and my dad pulled her away, their footsteps fading. I stood alone in the emptying hall, the weight of the wind settling in. I'd taken back my home, my memories, my anchor. But the cost wasn't just financial. The family I'd known, the one I'd trusted without question, was gone, severed by their own hands. Lena's voice broke through. You ready to go home? Home. The word felt new, fragile, but mine. I'd won the house, but lost my family. Could I rebuild my life in those empty rooms? Or was the past gone for good? The keys felt heavy in my hand, cold metal biting into my palm as I unlocked the front door of my childhood home. The hinges creaked, a sound I knew by heart, and I stepped inside. The air was stale, the rooms bare, but every corner held a ghost. My mom's laughter in the kitchen, my dad's record spinning in the garage, my old bike propped against the hallway wall. I'd won it back, paid for with every dollar I had in a loan that had chained me for years. My boots echoed on the hardwood, each step a claim on what my parents tried to erase. I walked to the attic, the stairs groaning under my weight. My initials carved into a beam when I was 12 were still there, faint but unbroken. I ran my fingers over them, my throat tight. This house was more than walls. It was proof of who I was, who I'd been before their betrayal. They'd sold it for a quick buck, chasing a Florida condo and a clean slate, leaving me to find out from a neighbor. Their lies, their dismissal. It's just a house, Jeremy. Now I still burned, but standing here I felt taller, stronger. I'd taken it back. Lena had texted me that morning. Your parents are in deep. Creditors are circling. Their financial house of cards, bad investments, hidden debts had collapsed without the sale money. Word spread in their small Florida community. They were pariahs now, their reputation as tattered as their bank account. I didn't smile at the news, but I didn't ache either. They'd chosen greed over me, and I'd made them pay. Not with anger, but with action. The winning bid, the house they couldn't have. I sat on the porch swing, the one I'd fixed as a teenager, its chains rusted but steady. The oak tree loomed above, leaves rustling in the November breeze. I'd spent years trusting family blindly, balancing their books, believing their promises. That Jeremy was gone, replaced by someone who fought, who saw through lies. The loan payments loomed, my savings were dust, but I'd rebuild here in these rooms. Maybe I'd start a family, fill the walls with new photos, new memories. The thought felt fragile, but real. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from my mom. I deleted it without listening. Their words couldn't undo the sale, the silence, the years of taking me for granted. I looked out at the yard, the spot where I'd buried my dog, and felt a quiet vow settle in my chest. This home was mine, and I'd never let anyone take it again. Not my parents, not anyone. The past was safe now, but the future was up to me. I'd won my home, but the emptiness lingered. Could I fill these rooms with a future, or would the past always haunt me?